Welcome to this episode of the Harpreet Singh Show. I'm your host Harpreet Singh from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. In today's program, we'll go over to Chandigarh and we'll be talking to Mr. Karan Singh Sidhu, who is a Special Chief Secretary Punjab and IAS officer, but he has also a lot of interest in spirituality. During the past few months, we have been talking to him about various issues which are related to spirituality. But today we'll be focusing on the importance of the Shera, as the Shera has just been celebrated. We'll talk to him as to generally we know about the evil side of Ravana. He's generally regarded as a sheer personification of something that is evil. But what about the good qualities that he had? So also we'll be focusing on as to what needs to be learned from the Shera and how the triumph of goodness over evil that needs to be brought in our daily lives also. So let's go over to Chandigarh and start talking with Mr. KBS Sidhu. Mr. Sidhu, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Morning and good evening to your viewers in Canada.
Thank you.
To be
So you've just celebrated the Shera, and every year we burn Ravan. We know the evil side of Ravan, so we'll not focus much on that particularly today. But if we could start off with, the importance of the Shera in the Indian life, whether it's the north or the south, everywhere, and even in Canada also we celebrated Ravan, though of course we could not burn the effigy of Ravan this time, but people celebrated in their homes. So when he's merely regarded as a sheer personification of everything that is evil, tell us a little bit about the good qualities also that he had from which we can learn something.
You see, normally in the Shera we are taught right from the school days onwards that it is the victory of the good over the evil, and therefore the Vanar Sena of Lord Rama vanquished Ravan, who had abducted Sita. So that's the general narrative. Now, one has to see the thing from two perspectives. One is that do you paint Ravan evil, totally black? So within that, there'll be two perspectives: that what were his good qualities and why, in spite of those good qualities, he happened to meet the fate that he eventually did. So first, he was a Brahman. One narrative is that he was the grandson of Brahma, who was supposed to have created the entire Srishti, the creator. Of course, he was a big Shiv Bhakt. More than that, he had the knowledge of all the four Vedas. So not only he could recite them from memory, he understood the meaning and imbibed the living, and also the six Shastras. So one symbolic significance is that the four Vedas and the six Shastras lying in a single head, which perhaps 10 different people, would be required to have that type of memory and mental faculties. So that is what the Shera was. The other is that each of the 10 heads are symbolic of, qualities. Normally, we rattle out 5-6 qualities which are in the evil domain, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Hankar, and then hatred and jealousy and so on. But also within these other faculties are things like mind, intellect, chit. So therefore, every person has qualities good and bad within him, and they are internally in conflict with each other. Depending on the circumstances, there may come a time when evil qualities, which may otherwise be dormant, they tend to overcome, and ultimately it is your buddhi or the intellect which helps you to discern what is actually good and bad. So therefore, these 10 qualities, good or bad, are something which were internally in conflict. And when the time came, at that particular crucial moment, he let go, his ahankar take over, and other qualities went into the background, as a result of which we had the siege and battle of Lanka, and was his eventual end. But we have to see that Ravan, of course, did so under grave provocation. His own sister Surupnakha, who, one narrative is, wanted a Swayamvar with Lakshman, and Swayamvar was the custom at that particular time. And therefore, when she was rebuffed, and she again tried for the Swayambar. Even there was a Sita Swayambar, Draupadi Swayambar. In the medieval ages, you had Samyukta and Prithviraj Swayambar, of course. Then this practice gradually tapered off. So he had a grave provocation, but even within that, he did not take to his palace, maintained physical distance, kept her in Ashok Vatika. But ultimately, the trigger which he kind of sowed the seeds of his own destruction was because the evil forces were not triggered more by lust, but more by a sense of revenge, hatred, and arrogance. That how could anyone dare touch my sister? So all those ultimately led to his destruction. So Ravan was a man, he was a Brahmin, he was a great Shiv Bhakt, we'll come to that shortly. But ultimately within him, people say that these 10 heads are not symbolically the 10 heads, these are really the mental faculties of one man equivalent to 10 people. So in our scriptures, one finds it very difficult where the symbolism ends and the actual description begins. But overall, he had good qualities and bad qualities, but at the crucial junctures, the bad qualities, they took over from a position of anger, arrogance, and hauteur, which ultimately spelled the seeds of his destruction.
Mm-hmm. Now, the question that arises is that why did this happen? As you have mentioned, the history behind this, that his sister wanted to have the Swayambar, and because that was not held, and then the way her sister was treated, that was one revenge, and that is why all this happened. But again, on the other hand, when we see he was a learned Brahmin, as you have said, he had a lot of knowledge about the Vedas, he had a lot of knowledge about other Shastras also, but he succumbed to the basic evils, and he just went in for that, that he abducted Sita and brought her to Lanka. We'll go for a short break, we'll be back, and then we'll continue our discussion as to how, as a human being, despite having a lot of knowledge, despite knowing about everything, but how all these evils can become heavier on us and we can succumb to those pressures, and how we have to resist that. That is what is very important. So we'll talk about all this. Let's go for a short break and we'll be shortly back and we'll continue with our discussion. Crowns, bridges, dental implants, root canal, dentures, bonding of the veneers, extractions, bone grafting ਆਦਿ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹਨ। ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਡੈਂਟਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਮਾਹਰ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਘੱਟ ਤੋਂ ਘੱਟ ਚਾਰਜ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਫॉर ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਸ਼ਾਈਨ ਐਂਡ ਸਮਾਈਲ 604 503 03 20 ਤੇ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ। ਕਿੰਗ ਜਾਰਜ ਸੁਪਰ ਸਟੋਰ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਯੂਨਿਟ 370 7488 ਕਿੰਗ ਜਾਰਜ ਬੁਲੇਵਾਰਡ ਸਰੀ।
ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਰੀ, ਡੈਲਟਾ, ਰਿਚਮੰਡ, ਐਬਸਫੋਰਡ ਜਾਂ ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਵਾਂ ਘਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਨੋਵੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ? ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਤਜਰਬੇਕਾਰ ਬਿਲਡਰ, ਇੱਕ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟਿਵ ਇੰਟੀਰੀਅਰ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਰ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗਾਈਡ ਕਰ ਸਕਣ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਉਸਾਰ ਸਕਣ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਜਾਂ ਸੰਦੀਪ 6048259295 ਉੱਤੇ। ਭਾਰਤ ਪੈਸੇ ਭੇਜਣੇ ਹੋਣ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਮੰਗਵਾਉਣੇ ਹੋਣ ਤੇ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਫੋਰੈਕਸ ਨੂੰ ਤਸੱਲੀ ਬਖਸ਼ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਰੇਟ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਗਾਰੰਟੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 6043491313 ਉੱਤੇ। ਦਰਦ ਤੋਂ ਆਰਾਮ ਐਲੋਪੈਥਿਕ ਦਵਾਈਆਂ ਖਾਣ ਨਾਲ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਸਾਈਡ ਇਫੈਕਟਸ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਨੈਚੁਰਲ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਸਪਲੀਮੈਂਟਸ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਦਰਦ ਨੂੰ ਜੜੋਂ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਰਕਸ ਫਾਰਮੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਟਾਫ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਟਸ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਹਰ ਹਿੱਸੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਹਨ। ਅਪਾਇੰਟਮੈਂਟ ਬੁੱਕ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 596 1774 ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ 8035 120 ਸਟਰੀਟ ਡੈਲਟਾ। ਦਰਦ ਨੂੰ ਜੜੋਂ ਖਤਮ ਕਰੋ। ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ। ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਸਰੀ ਕਲੋਵਰਡੇਲ ਤੇ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ ਵੈਲੀ ਦੇ ਟਾਪ ਰੀਅਲਟਰ ਜੈਸ ਓਬਰਾਏ ਵੱਲੋਂ, ਜੋ ਰੀਮੈਕਸ ਬਲੂਪ੍ਰਿੰਟ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਨ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੰਟੈਗ੍ਰਿਟੀ, ਕਮਿਟਮੈਂਟ ਤੇ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਕਾਰਨ, ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਘਰ ਜਾਂ ਕਮਰਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਰਟੀ ਖਰੀਦਣੀ ਜਾਂ ਵੇਚਣੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੌਖਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਸੈਸ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਕਲਾਇੰਟ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਾਲ 24 ਘੰਟਿਆਂ 'ਚ ਵਾਪਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੁਟਾਉਂਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ $500 ਨਗਦ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਆਪਣੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੁਫਤ ਮਾਰਕੀਟ ਵੈਲਿਊਏਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਸਲਾਹ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 7789947450 778 994 7450 ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਈਮੇਲ ਕਰੋ joe@jasobrai.ca ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਹੈ jasobrai.ca। ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੀਂ ਤੇ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਦਿੱਖ ਦੇਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਐਕਮੀ ਕਲਾਸ ਲਿਮਟਿਡ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਫਰੇਮਲੈਸ ਗਲਾਸ ਰੇਲਿੰਗਸ, ਕਸਟਮ ਵੁੱਡ ਕਲੋਜ਼ਟ, ਸ਼ਾਰ ਤੇ ਟਬ ਡੋਰਸ, ਸ਼ਾਰ ਸਲਾਈਡਰਸ,
ਬੈਵਲਡ ਵੁੱਡ ਜਾਂ ਮੈਟਲ ਟ੍ਰਿਮ ਮਿਰਰਸ ਤੇ ਕਸਟਮ ਗਲਾਸ ਵਰਕ ਦੀ ਮਹਾਰਤ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹਨ। ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ, ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ, ਕਰਾਫਟਸਮੈਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਤੇ ਹਾਈ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਜਾਣੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਨ। ਆਪਣੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਜਾਂ ਰੈਨੋਵੇਟ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਘਰ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 6045438777 604 543 8777। ਘਰ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਾਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਚਨ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਸਟ ਹੋਮ ਕਿਚਨ ਕੈਬਨਿਟਸ ਲੋਅਰ ਮੇਨਲੈਂਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਜਾਣੀ ਪਛਾਣੀ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਹਨ। ਕਸਟਮ ਹਾਈ ਐਂਡ ਘਰਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਮਲਟੀ ਯੂਨਿਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟਸ ਇਹ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਹਰ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਕੈਬਨਿਟ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਬੈਸਟ ਹੋਮ ਕਿਚਨ ਕੈਬਨਿਟਸ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ। ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਸੁਰਜੀਤ ਤੇਸੀ ਨੂੰ 6045918171 604 591 8171। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਈਮੇਲ ਹੈ info@besthomekitchens.com। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਤੇ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਰ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਾਥ ਦਿਆ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਕਰਨਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਿੱਧੂ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਚੀਫ ਸੈਕਟਰੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲਿਸਟ ਵੀ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਟੂਵਰਡ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਹੈ। ਐਂਡ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੁਸ਼ਹਿਰੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਟ੍ਰਿੰਫ ਆਫ ਗੁੱਡਨੈਸ ਓਵਰ ਈਵਲ। ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੱਖ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਰਾਵਣ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਮਾੜਾ ਪੱਖ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਗੁਣ ਸਨ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਗਿਆਨੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਬਾਵਜੂਦ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਈਵਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਭਾਰੂ ਹੋ ਜਾਣ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਨਿਰਣੇ ਲੈਣੇ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਐਂਡ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਕੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਰਾਵਣ is a prime example of that. So let's get back to Mr. Sidhu and continue with the discussion. So Mr. Sidhu, before the break, as you mentioned, the qualities, some of the qualities of Ravan, but the 10 heads have a special significance. So could we elaborate on this particular aspect, that what does those 10 heads signify?
So basically, 10 heads, again, there are various interpretations. And one, of course, is that he was a great Shiv Bhakt, and he had mental faculties equivalent to 10 people. But he prayed and prayed to Lord Shiva. He says, this head of mine is quite meaningless unless thoda mere parya hath mere sir te nahi hai. So he, of course, had a Lanka, which is a Lanka of gold and so on. So in terms of monetary and valuable precious offerings, no one could match him in that day and age. But he said, what sacrifice can I make, apart from my own head? So he cut off his head and laid at the feet of Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva returned it once. He repeated it twice. He then cut it again and put it back again. So in this way, this process was repeated 10 times. And ultimately, Lord Shiva is stated to have kind of been so much moved that he blessed him with numerous boons and qualities. And of course, he was already known to be quasi-immortal. So therefore, now whether you regard these 10 heads as a symbol of his intense devotion to Lord Shiva, those heads coming back, whether they were physically one head or 10 different heads, or his mental faculties equivalent to the mental faculties of 10 ordinary men, remembering and ingesting the gist of the Vedas and the Shastras, that's a different thing. But the idea is that he was an extraordinary man. And of course, as we have touched before, in each of those heads, there are qualities which are good or bad. He had a fair amount of good qualities also in terms of his buddhi, vivek, determination, and so on. But then the evils are there. And as we have spoken in the previous episodes, it is at that crucial moment when the evil is about to overpower within you the positive forces, there comes a narrow window of opportunity in which your intellect should be able to guide you to say no at that particular moment itself. But if at that particular juncture you succumb for whatever reasons to whichever vice or evil, then there is a kind of an irreversible process which is triggered, and you literally then are inevitably onto the path of destruction. So that is what really happened in this case. And interestingly, I was able to come across in Shri Guru Granth Sahib Shri Guru Arjan Dev Ji da hai Ang 1363 te Chaubole Mahalla Panchma. So one of the favorite Sikhs of Guru Arjan Dev Ji was Pai Samman, who, of course, there's another story for another day. And he was willing to really cut off the head of his son to raise some funds to appease the Guru and his Sangat. And then Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj, in this shlok, he says, Samman jo is prem ki dam ke hoti saat. He said, oh, Pai Samman, if this love between the Sikh and the Guru, or between the Sikh and the Lord Almighty, were to be mired in terms of the offerings that you could make, the second line is, Ravan hote so rank nahi. Ravan was not a beggar. Jin sardine kaat. I mean, in his devotion, why did Ravan have to cut his head and place at the feet of Lord Shiva? Because he had a lot of money. So there is also a kind of a message which Guru Arjan Dev Ji illustrates with reference to the story of Ramayana, that we need not necessarily make precious offerings to appease the God in terms of charities. What you need to be good in your deeds and follow your conscience and be good. And it is not necessarily in terms of how much money you can offer. So even Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj has illustrated that had he even offered the whole of Lanka at the feet of Lord Shiva, maybe Lord Shiva may not have been appeased to that extent. But he did so in terms of literally cutting off his heads. And of course, who doesn't know the story of the Khalsa, where again the ultimate sacrifice and the birth of the Khalsa is where the Sikhs gladly agreed to offer their heads to the Guru. So I think down the ages, offering your head, and that also a head of a person who's so wise, so knowledgeable, was deemed to be and has been seen to be the ultimate sacrifice, far transcending any other physical offering that you could make. And that is what Ravan made, and he kind of got empowered with numerous boons, which of course he used or misused or abused as the story unfolded.
Right. So, Mr. Sidhu, the uniqueness of his bhakti was that he cut off his head. That was his kind of surrendering to what he believed in, and that is why, as you said, that the boons and everything, whatever he got. But it was his sheer, I would say, his devotion that he was not even ready, that he even cut off his head at the feet of Lord Shiva.
Absolutely. And remember, it is not as if Lord Shiva proactively asked him to do this.
Right.
You know, that perhaps could be a different story if you go into the Mughal history and the birth of Islam. Maybe you would have where, actively their heads were sought. Here he's suo moto. He said, I cannot think of a better way. This head of mine is of no use to me. What if I know all the Vedas? I'm a Chaturvedi of the 4 Vedas, and I know all the Shastras. But this is the ultimate sacrifice which a knowledgeable man, a Brahmin, could make, and he did make, and that is how Lord Shiva, showered and conferred a number of boons onto Ravan.
Great. Mr. Sidhu, again, it's time for a short break. We'll go for a break. We'll be back, and from here only we'll continue with the discussion. If you have any questions, it's going live on. You can just text me at my cell phone, or on Facebook or on YouTube. We are live. So if you have any question, please send us the question so that we can continue with that discussion and ask it from Mr. Sidhu. We'll be shortly back.
ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਵੇਂ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸਟੋਵ, ਓਵਨ, ਫ੍ਰਿਜ, ਵਾਸ਼ਰ ਡਰਾਇਰ, ਮਾਈਕ੍ਰੋਵੇਵ, ਫ੍ਰੀਜ਼ਰਸ ਜਾਂ ਡਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ਼ਰ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪਹੁੰਚੋ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਮ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਤੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ 3 ਬ੍ਰਾਂਚਸ ਸਰੀ, ਐਬਟਸਫੋਰਡ ਤੇ ਚਿਲਵੈਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਨ। ਇੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਮਿਲਣਗੇ। ਇਹ ਡਿਲੀਵਰੀ ਤੇ ਇੰਸਟਾਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। Special packages for builders and homeowners. Call 604-590-4140 604-590-4140।
ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਹਰ ਕੋਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਨਿੱਜੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਸੁਨਹਿਰੀ ਪਲ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰਿਆ ਜੀਵਨ ਬਤੀਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਪੂਰੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਦ ਕਿਸੇ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਨੂੰ ਸਜੇ ਹੋਏ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਬਦਲਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਨਵੇਂ ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਰੇਮਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ਿੰਗ ਤੱਕ, ਡ੍ਰੇਪਰੀ, ਪੇਂਟਿੰਗਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਡੈਕੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਅਸੈਸਰੀਜ਼ ਤੱਕ, ਤੁਸੀਂ SK ਹੋਮ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਹਕੀਕਤ 'ਚ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਕੰਟੈਕਟ ਕਰੋ ਸੰਦੀਪ ਕੌਰ 6048259295।
ਵੈਨਕਾਸਾ ਟਾਈਲ ਅਤੇ ਸਟੋਨ ਸ਼ੋਰੂਮ ਇੱਕ ਐਸੀ ਥਾਂ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੋਲਸੇਲ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹਰ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਟਾਈਲਸ, ਸਟੋਨ, ਮਾਰਬਲ, ਬੈਕਸਪਲੈਸ਼, ਮੋਜ਼ੇਕ ਆਦਿ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਟਾਲੀਅਨ, ਸਪੈਨਿਸ਼, ਚਾਈਨੀਜ਼, ਪੋਰਸਲਨ ਜਾਂ ਸਿਰੈਮਿਕ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਜਾਂ ਮਾਰਬਲ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਆਰਡਰ ਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਕਲੀਅਰੈਂਸ ਤੇ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਮਾਲਕ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਇੰਪੋਰਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ 1304 84 ਐਵਨਿਊ ਸਰੀ। ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 330 7363 604 330 7363।
Karen thought she won a gift card, but we had a much bigger surprise for her. We rise by lifting others. Basant Motors.
ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਨਵੇਂ ਤੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸਟੋਵ, ਓਵਨ, ਫ੍ਰਿਜ, ਵਾਸ਼ਰ ਡਰਾਇਰ, ਮਾਈਕ੍ਰੋਵੇਵ, ਫ੍ਰੀਜ਼ਰਸ ਜਾਂ ਡਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ਼ਰ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪਹੁੰਚੋ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਮ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਤੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ 3 ਬ੍ਰਾਂਚਸ ਸਰੀ, ਐਬਟਸਫੋਰਡ ਤੇ ਚਿਲਵੈਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਨ। ਇੱਥੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਵਾਜਬ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਅਪਲਾਈਐਂਸਸ ਮਿਲਣਗੇ। ਇਹ ਡਿਲੀਵਰੀ ਤੇ ਇੰਸਟਾਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਪੈਕੇजेस ਫॉर ਬਿਲਡਰਸ ਐਂਡ ਹੋਮ ਓਨਰਸ। ਕਾਲ 604 590 4140 604 590 4140।
Once again, welcome back to the program. Today we are talking to Mr. KVS Sidhu on the significance of the 10 heads of Ravan, and we'll shortly get him back, but before that would like to announce our sponsors for today's program. The program has been brought to you with the support of AMC Insurance. If you're looking for home, auto, travel, business, life or recreational insurance, you can depend upon AMC Insurance. They have 9 branches in the lower mainland to serve you, and they're open 7 days a week from 8:30 a.m. onwards till 9 p.m. Call 604 507 6666 for more information. Our next sponsor is AHI Transportation Group. They have been in the transportation and storage industry since 1993, and their motto is "Your cargo is our responsibility." They're located at 8970 River Road, Delta, and if you want to send your products anywhere in Canada, they say that we will provide you the right service. 604-940-9511 is their phone number. You can email shinda@ahi.com or go to the website at ahi.com. ਨਵਾਂ ਘਰ ਬਣਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਨੋਵੇਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਸੋਚ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਕਿਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਲਵਾਈਆਂ ਜਾਣ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਦੌੜ ਖਤਮ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਅਮਨ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਕੋਲ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਕੇ। ਗ੍ਰੇਨਾਈਟ, ਮਾਰਬਲ, ਪੋਰਸਲਨ, ਸੈਰਾਮਿਕ ਟਾਈਲਸ, ਕਿਚਨ, ਬਾਥ, ਸ਼ਲੂਟਰ ਦੇ ਕਸਟਮ ਸ਼ਾਰ ਬੇਸ, ਫਾਇਰਪਲੇਸਿਸ ਤੇ ਡੈਕਸ ਤੇ ਦੀਵਾਰਾਂ ਤੇ ਟਾਈਲਸ ਲਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਮਹਾਰਤ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹਨ। ਹਰ ਬਜਟ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਅਮਨ ਨੂੰ 778-316-3510 778 316 3510। So let's go back again to Chandigarh and continue with our discussion. So Mr. Sidhu, before the break you have talked a lot of good qualities which Ravan had. Now of course there was interaction happening between Ramji and Ravan and Lakshman and Ravan. It is said that he said very important message was given to Lakshman at the end when he was dying. What was that message what he gave, Ravan gave to Lakshman?
You know, the popular belief is after he had been stuck by that mortal and fatal arrow in his belly, of course, having been betrayed by his own brother Vibhishan, now Ravan lay dying. And now this itself is a big, evidence of his being a learned and a great man, because none other than Lord Ram himself, Ramchandra ji, he instructed Lakshman. He said, a great man is, going off this earth, and irrespective of what he may have done, there would be some distilled and ingested wisdom that he would have in him. Why don't you go and really, get what that wisdom is? A dying man would be able to give you something which, years of penance and meditation may not be able to give you. And of course, here one would also refer that ultimately the Antim Sanskar of Ravan there and then was thereafter performed by Lord Ram himself with full honors. After all, he fought valiantly. So Lakshman, of course, a little impetuous, didn't understand, and he just walked with a swagger and stood on the head of the dying Ravan and, asked, "Hey Ravan, let me know what you have to tell as your parting words." And Ravan he was still alive. Life was oozing out of him. He opened one eye and kind of scoffed at him and said nothing. And Lakshman was pretty confused, and he said, came back to his elder brother Bhagwan Ram, and he said, "Brother Shri, you sent me, and look at this person. He's still not reformed person even at the end of his journey on this planet, and why did you have to actually ask me to go like this and return empty-handed? So then Lord Ram is supposed to have said that, Lakshman, when you want to acquire knowledge, you should go with a sense of humility, stand not on his head, but bow and, pay obeisance at his feet and bend down and then seek that knowledge, and perhaps you may have a different result. So that is exactly what happened. And then there are different versions, and I will stick to the one which is the most popularly accepted. What Lakshman said, I think, holds good even today. And in everyday life, that particular dictum holds good. He said, every day you have an urge to do pun, to do good. You want to do it. And then for certain reasons, you feel like, okay, I'll do it over the weekend, I'll do it tomorrow, and so on. And similarly, you have an urge to do evil, then your urge is to do it instantaneously and immediately. He said the key giveaway which I have to give you is that if there is an urge to do pun, to do good, do not wait even for a moment, do it there and then, because having slept overnight, you may have different thoughts and different priorities. On the other hand, if you really want to do something which is evil, it is evil, postpone it for a day, 2 days, and you'll find that the passion or the anger or the lust, whatever is associated with whatever you were about to do, would have gone down. So this is in essence what he said, and I think we meet these situations and dilemmas in everyday life. And the giveaway of Ravan, who's otherwise supposed to be personification of all evil, is if we can draw positive lessons, that if you want to do good, do it immediately. Evil, postpone it, it will automatically attenuate. So that was stated to be.
That's very true, what you have said. Now, again, as you have very rightly said, the evil part everybody knows, but the positivity of Ravan also needs to be learned. Today, wherever in the world Indians are, they celebrate the Shaira, and we just say the triumph of good over evil. But then again, how a learned person forgot all the basic values, what he had inculcated in him through his devotion, through his heart devotion rather, as you mentioned, he was a Shiv Bhakt, and how he had cut off his head also. I have a question from Renu, and she says that we do a lot of part every day, but from the talk what you're giving, this means that having knowledge is not enough. The Vivek Buddhi, that is what is important, how to realize and how to use it at the right time, that is the most important thing. Could you just tell a little bit on this?
Absolutely. When you do part, and it has not to be a mechanical process, but part, when you recite, then you also ingest, your ears are hearing, your mind is processing, and it is being ingested in you, and ultimately becoming your value system. And intellect is not the same that you were born with. You are growing with that buddhi and vivek all the time, which is a sum total of all the experiences that you have been subjected to, the values you have imbibed along the way. So therefore, when we do part indirectly, for instance, even this little nugget which Ravan may have given to Lakshman, if we can imbibe it, then in our future decisions and buddhi and vivek, we can have discerning decisions. And those discerning decisions can save us from going on to the path of the disaster. So yes, all the Shastras, if read mechanically, may not be of any use. There are a number of shlokas in Shri Guru Granth Sahib which tell you that it is meaningless if you're just mechanically doing. But if the meaning is being ingested and ultimately becoming a part and parcel of your value system, it will surely help you.
Absolutely. So Ravan nurtured this illusion that he was immortal. Of course, he had that illusion. But also in Guru Granth Sahib also, there are a number of times that Ravan's name is mentioned, and you have already talked about this. So is there any specific Shabad which talks about that this illusion of, on the illusion of Ravan?
Absolutely. In fact, not once and twice, and some of these shlokas are very well known and almost a part of the idiom. And the first one, which I'm going to, talk about, is by Bhagat Kabir ji, and he says, "Ik lakh poot sawa lakh nati, tehe Ravan kar diya na bati." So you have had lakhs of sons and thousands of grandsons and so on, so forth. But what is the status today? Na diva na batti. Not only there is no lamp, there is not even a wick of cotton to light that lamp. So therefore, you may think that you are very rich, you may think that you are powerful, and therefore you could last on forever and you don't need to bother for the dharma or anyone else. But this is a reminder in Shri Guru Granth Sahib, Bhagat Kabir di Bani de vich, even the most powerful of Ravan, ultimately there was nothing that is left of him, including his Sone ki Lanka and so on. And of course, again, which is the entire Gurbani is replete with the message that whatever is born has to die. Jo upje so binas hai. So these are towards the concluding verses of Shri Guru Granth Sahib, and this is in Shlok Malla Noma, that means composed by Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Maharaj. And sometimes I may add in a minute that as school kids we used to ask that we were told that Shri Guru Granth Sahib was composed by Shri Guru Arjan Dev Ji, the 5th Guru, and so how come the 9th Guru's shlokas have figured in Guru Granth Sahib? So the answer to that was when these beads were lost after Guru Sahib, Guru Gobind Ji, Singh Ji Maharaj evacuated Chamkaur Sahib, then ultimately at Talwandi Sabo, out of his memory, he recited and got those entire Ad Granth rewritten and took the opportunity of adding Nome Parsha de Shlok ne, which are really verses in gold, which are now towards the concluding verses of the Guru Granth Sahib. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji didn't add a single verse of his own in Guru Granth Sahib. So this is Shlok Mahalla Nome di hai tukane Ram gayo Ravan gayo bho parvar. Now here Guru Sahib Nome Parsha is talking not only of Ravan but also Lord Ram, because he was a human avatar. He's supposed to be a Vishnu avatar, but irrespective, anything which takes the bodily form and human being and terrestrial, they have to go, whether they are the Sikh gurus or the Christ or whatever. So anything which is human will not last forever. So Ram gayo, Ravan gayo, Jaco. In same thing, what Bhagat Kabir Ji was saying, that he had a huge family. And kaho nanak thir kuch nahi supne jo sansar. Nothing is permanent. So especially anything which is living, even non-living things, atoms they are decaying, they have half-life, radioactive ones decay faster, the so-called not radioactive do decay, they may have a half-life which is going to millions of years. So the lesson, of course, is that our lifespan on this planet, A, is not infinite, it is finite. B, we really don't know. That is why we say Swas, Swas, Simro Gobind, every breath, because you don't know which could be the last breath. So therefore, you want to garner the positive karmic points, do that, and at no point have this notion that, I am immortal, I'm here to stay forever, and therefore I'm going to go on forever, and let that element of arrogance not come to you, irrespective of the boons that may have been conferred upon you.
Absolutely.
So very powerful message from Shri Guru Granth Sahib, illustrated with ultimately Ravan, who had to die for whatever reasons, but he was not immortal.
Absolutely. And this is what our Granths, our Shastras teach us: humility, nobility, and that is what we need to incorporate in our daily life. There are a lot of questions, but I would just like to take one more and then we'll just conclude with the program. And this question is from Mr. Mahesh, and he thanks you for coming over and talking on ancient scriptures. And today he says that you always talk about discerning faculty. He says how to sharpen your discerning faculty, because you also teach IAS trainees also. So on this aspect, what would you like to say towards the end, Mr. Sidhu?
You see, ultimately there are different type of stimuluses, different type of pressures and so on which come on an individual. In life, these are not a decision between what is good or bad, or what is right or wrong. The things are far more nuanced, and that is what makes these decisions different. And generally, if you see, it is a choice between what is good and what is pleasurable. Now, what is pleasurable may give you a sense of gratification immediately. It will appeal to your senses. It may give you money in the short run. It may give you your 15 minutes of fame or whatever. So it is something pleasurable. On the other hand, good is what is good not only for you but for the world at large. Howsoever small, there has to be an element of selflessness in that particular goodness. And that's why when we say phal ki ichha mat karo, Lord Krishna was talking in terms of your personal dividends. Discerning decisions when the population at large, you are the leader of a country, you are the CEO of a company, or your customers or your employees are going to be affected. That has to be a discerning decision. You can't say, "Main phal ki ichha nahi kar raha, therefore I'm going to take reckless decision." So all these, I think, together will help you making a decision which is ultimately going to be a choice between good and pleasurable. It will not be a choice between good and bad. Your lawyers or your chartered accountants will tell you that this is an offense, this is not an offense.
Yeah.
But the dilemmas that you have, generally 80-90% I have found in my own personal life and professional life, as well as the students and the trainees and the officers who, of course, grow into the service pretty fast. Within 7-10 years, they are handling districts. Is that what is pleasurable is something quick, immediate, and what is good takes you on a long path. So that is what the path is to be chosen.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Sidhu, for sparing your time and talking on this important aspect, because we always, when we celebrate the Shara, as I said before also, we just say it's triumph of good over evil, but the qualities of Ravan and how he got succumbed to instant gratification, and that is what led to his demise. Thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asan Mr. Karan Singh Sidhu, Special Chief Secretary Punjab. ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਅਧਿਆਤਮਕਤਾ ਵੱਲ ਹੁਣ ਧਿਆਨ ਹੈਗਾ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਪੇਜ ਜੋ ਆਪਣਾ ਚਲਾਇਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਰਨਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਿੱਧੂ, ਉੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਟੌਪਿਕਸ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। And today what we focused was that let's not get succumbed to instant gratification. Let's hold on to our values, our principles, and that is what is going to lead us to be happy and successful. Because success is not just instantly focusing on the money or the pleasures, but understanding what life is all about. That is what is going to lead us to success. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time and being a part of this program. And if you like these programs, we'll just take some support from you. Please go to youtube.com/Harpreet Singh Show and you can subscribe to this program. Every evening from 7 p.m. onwards, Monday to Friday, we get different guests and we talk on different topics. So if you like these programs, please subscribe to it. And Facebook also, the Harpreet Singh Show. With this, I would like to end this program today. Ithe hi lena aa gaya, fir mulaqat karange. Have a safe evening and stay healthy and stay safe.
ਡੈਂਟਲ ਕਲੀਨਿਕ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਸਤਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਦੇਖ-ਰੇਖ ਹੇਠ ਆਧੁਨਿਕ ਮਸ਼ੀਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਦੰਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਹੀ ਕੇਅਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੰਦਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਫ਼ ਕਰਨਾ, ਕਰਾਊਨਸ, ਬ੍ਰਿਜਸ, ਡੈਂਟਲ ਇੰਪਲਾਂਟਸ, ਰੂਟ ਕਨਾਲ, ਡੈਂਚਰਸ, ਬੌਂਡਿੰਗ ਅਤੇ ਵਨੀਰਸ, ਐਕਸਟ੍ਰੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ, ਬੋਨ ਕ੍ਰੈਫਟਿੰਗ ਆਦਿ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹਨ। ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਡੈਂਟਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਮਾਹਰ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਘੱਟ ਤੋਂ ਘੱਟ ਚਾਰਜ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਫॉर ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਸ਼ਾਈਨ ਐਂਡ ਸਮਾਈਲ 604-503-0320 ਤੇ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ। ਕਿੰਗ ਜਾਰਜ ਸੁਪਰ ਸਟੋਰ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ, ਯੂਨਿਟ 370, 7488 ਕਿੰਗ ਜਾਰਜ ਬੁਲੇਵਾਰਡ, ਸਰੀ। ਦਰਦ ਤੋਂ ਆਰਾਮ ਐਲੋਪੈਥਿਕ ਦਵਾਈਆਂ ਖਾਣ ਨਾਲ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਸਾਈਡ ਇਫੈਕਟਸ ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਨ। ਨੈਚੁਰਲ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਸਪਲੀਮੈਂਟਸ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਦਰਦ ਨੂੰ ਜੜੋਂ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਰਕਸ ਫਾਰਮੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਟਾਫ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਟਸ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਹਰ ਹਿੱਸੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਹਨ। ਅਪਾਇੰਟਮੈਂਟ ਬੁੱਕ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ 604 596 1774 ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰੋ 8035 120 ਸਟਰੀਟ ਡੈਲਟਾ। ਦਰਦ ਨੂੰ ਜੜੋਂ ਖਤਮ ਕਰੋ।